Hey ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves and you're doing well. So in this video, we're going to be discussing a change in location, okay, and why you must change locations sometimes, okay. And I will discuss, I'll give you 4 different reasons for that, okay. As I believe that sometimes not changing our location and staying in the same place where you were born, right? Staying in the same place forever can actually hinder your progress, okay? It can hinder you spiritually. It can keep you from progressing spiritually. It can keep you from growing. It can keep you from experiencing your life purpose. And it can keep you from pretty much advancing in every way, right? So, in this video, we're going to discuss this, okay? So, what is the first reason why you should change locations? Well, first of all, guys, the reason being is because it wasn't your location probably wasn't your original choice to begin with, right? And the reason being is because you were too young to decide where to move, right? So everything has its own energy, right? You can think of it this way, right? So even places, right? Everything is energy, right? And that means that every place will have its own energy, right? So every area will have its own energy. Even every country will have its own energy, right? Like, for example, if I think of okay, all of you Americans don't get offended, okay? But America, whenever you land in America, you can, like, as an empath, I can sense this like huge energy of fear, okay? There's lots of fear that's going on in America, right? People are fearful, people are living in fear, and of course it's like this all over the world, right? But in America it's especially prevalent. And I'm sure if you're watching my channel, you're probably familiar on why that is, right? I'm not going to discuss it here, right? But all that I'm saying is that every area, every location will have its own energy, okay? And so the energy can either be beneficial or the opposite, right? It can be detrimental, right? And that's why, for example, if you're choosing different places, right, to go to, make sure that you're going to places that have good energy, okay? Because it's extremely important for your health, okay? It's extremely important for your mental well-being, your emotional well-being, your spiritual well-being, right? So you have to choose carefully, okay? Just like with people, right? Every person carries its own energy, just like every place will carry its own energy. So if lots of, gambling, if lots of prostitution, if lots of chaos is going on in a certain location, that energy is going to stay there. It's going to be felt, okay? And so you're probably going to, by going to that place, you're going to pick it up, right? Anyway, so let's get back to why you should perhaps think about moving, okay? If you are living in the same location that you've lived in since you were a child, okay? The reason being, right, is because and of course that's not always going to be the case, right? But your parents, right, they chose that particular location because of their own energy, okay? So the energy that was in alignment with their own, okay, they chose that location, they chose that specific country, right? And so it isn't necessarily going to be in alignment with who you are as you grow and as you change and as you develop, as you get wiser, right? As you heal, perhaps, right? Maybe maybe one of your parents or 2 of them were extremely toxic, right? So you're going to end up living in a very toxic environment, basically. That was in alignment with, your parents, right? Or your parents' energy, right? But that is no longer in alignment with who you are as a person, right? Because as you grew, your energy changed. And so, that's going to be felt, right? And so you have to consider that. So as you're growing, as you're evolving, right? As you're changing, as you're growing as a person, as you elevate, basically, you're going to have to step away from all of those things that are no longer serving you, right? And that includes your energy, right? Or the energy that from the past, basically, right? Or the energy from your childhood, right? Your neighborhood, your I don't know, even your country sometimes, you know. So, you know, as we're growing, right, as we're learning, we're changing, right, and hopefully becoming better people, right? And so sometimes you have to, as we're doing that, our own energy changes, right, for the better. And that means we have to find something new that's now more in alignment with who we are, right, as people. Okay, and that often includes changing locations, relocating somewhere else that's more suitable for us, right? I don't know, they say birds of a feather flock together, right? And that might be the case, right? As you're healing, as you're elevating, as you're growing as a person, right, you're going to have to find the location or a country that's more in alignment with who you are, and that kind of attracts like the same kind of people, or that where you can really find your own tribe, right? I suppose you can always find your own tribe pretty much anywhere, right? But like I said, birds of a feather flock together, right? So certain locations are always going to attract certain types of people, right? And so yeah, guys, I don't know. I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about like how many times I've moved, right? I used to basically, originally I'm from Latvia, right? And so I moved out when I was about maybe 9 or 10, right? So I moved out of Latvia, I moved to Florida, right? And of course it wasn't by choice, it was my mom who moved there, right? She moved us, she basically brought me and my brother to Florida, right? And so I grew up in Florida pretty much. As soon as I finished my uni there, I decided to move to San Francisco, to California with my ex-boyfriend, right? And so we moved to California. I ended up living in California also for a pretty long time, right? And then I just decided to back away and move, you know, because I understood the system. I understood that America wasn't for me, you know, and after like contemplating and just, you know, I decided to basically to just go travel, right? And so I finished work, I sold all my belongings, I sold my car, right? And I just went, I just traveled the world basically, you know? So I went to many different countries, and I also ended up living in many different countries, you know? So I lived in the UK for 1 year, I lived in Greece for like 6 or 7 months, I lived in Bulgaria, right? And so yeah, I lived in many different places, and you know, I kind of like, I was trying to figure out which place was in alignment with who I now was, basically, you know, so I was trying to find my place. And I believe each of us, we can prosper and thrive in certain locations, okay? So you just have to feel it out, you have to go by your intuition, and whatever feels right for you, then, you know, you have to basically move there. You know, and you will probably thrive and prosper there, because I really, really love where I'm at right now. You know, I really do love this location completely. I'm here by choice, I'm here consciously, right? And so I really do recommend this for you too, is to find your tribe, find your location, you know, and settle down here, right? Also, I will recommend not to settle down in any location that is a little bit way too different for you, right? For your genes, basically, genetically, right? Because you guys, we cannot, like, for example, if you're extremely white or if you're very black, right? You don't want to, like, as a black person, for example, you don't want to, like, move to Iceland, for example, right? Or as a really white person, you don't want to move to Africa, okay? Because you're probably not going to, it's not going to benefit, it's going to, it might even damage your DNA to an extent, okay? And it might make you unhealthier, okay? I've read some things about this, so, and that has to do with the environment, right? Certain environments are more detrimental to our health is if they're too different, okay? So guys, also, you know, moving away from certain locations, right, or where you grew up, basically it can really, really benefit you. And the reason being, right, is because sometimes, you know, certain environments, for example, it can be our family, right, it can be bad friends, right, it can be pretty much anyone, they can be holding us back, okay, they can be holding us back from moving on and from developing and from living in our purpose, okay? And so that's the reason why you have to sometimes step away, right? Because oftentimes a lot of people just get stuck in these cycles, right? And they just like, they're living their lives on repeat, right? And they're just going through these cycles, going through these motions, right? And they're forgetting that you know, they're forgetting that they don't have to live this way, okay? They can get out of these cycles and they can start over. They can start a new life, right? Oftentimes, a lot of people, they kind of like, once they know us or they think they know us, right? They have a certain perception of us, right? That they've created in their heads. And so that perception just never changes, right? So they're always behaving in a certain way towards us, right? Even if we changed, right? They might not necessarily recognize this change. They might feel it to an extent, right? But they're not going to really recognize it, and they might continue to treat us the same way, right? So in this regard, right, oftentimes you will be treated a certain way by certain people, by family members, right? And so they're not going to really recognize, sometimes they're not going to recognize your worth. Sometimes they're going to be overly negative, overly critical of you, right? They're going to treat you a certain way that they were used to treating you, even if you yourself changed, okay? So you don't want this, okay? Sometimes you need to step away, right? You need to break these cycles sometimes, especially with like toxic family members, right? Or toxic friendships, right? And you have to just step away, and you need this distance, okay? You need this distance in order to, you know, escape those cycles. You need to step away. So first of all, you can get a better perspective of things, okay? And second of all, because you need that space to grow and to improve and to develop even farther, okay? And so yeah, that's the reason why, you know, sometimes you need to step away from a certain location, okay? Is that you can get this all of that, okay? Another example is the reason why you should change locations, right? Is because, you know, certain places are way too expensive, guys. And look, when I lived in Greece, okay, I lived like a millionaire, basically, okay? And I lived in like the best place. I lived on top of a mountain, right? The mountain was overlooking the ocean, right? And it was just so gorgeous, right? I would just experience this beautiful sunset, right? And sunrise almost every single day, right? And it was just so, my kitty cat. It was just so stunning, you know. I just completely, I was in awe, I was in love. I was just so happy there, you know. And Greece was just perfect. It was my place for sure, okay? So yeah, guys, I was living like a millionaire, basically, you know, and I didn't have to pay so much money for that place, really. I lived in Piraeus, right? And it's like a marina, right? There were a lot of boats nearby, right? And I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, like I used to live in San Francisco, right? And so in San Francisco, you know, if you're in Marina, for example, right, Marin County or something, or if you're in like Tiburon, right, Sausalito, right, it's like the same thing. You're basically experiencing a similar lifestyle, right, as I was experiencing in Greece, but only millionaires were, like extremely wealthy people were allowed to you know, live that way, basically, right? Or had the opportunity to experience that, right? And I was living in a completely different place, right? And everything was way cheaper, okay? So I was living like a millionaire, basically, right? While paying next to nothing or very little, basically, for this kind of lifestyle, okay? And so that's why, you know, sometimes you're not a tree. You have to recognize that. Sometimes you have to move locations because a better life awaits you, basically, okay? Whereas in United States or in America, you won't be able to afford, you know, a house or a place of your own or something, right? Because everything is just way too expensive. In another country, life. So sometimes you just have to take that leap of faith, right? And just have faith that everything is going to be okay, you know? You're still on Earth, right? You're still on the same planet. Yeah, things might be different, you know, cultural-wise, right? But still, you're going to make it, right? And of course, if you can get work online, that's even better, right? Because you can work from anywhere in the world, right? It doesn't always have to be this way. Of course, you can, you know, get a job physically somewhere too, right? It might take a little bit more legwork, right? But it's still possible, right? So where there's a will, there's a way, right? Also, I highly recommend moving for single parents, okay? If you're able to, of course, right? If you're able to move, okay? Rather than living in a very expensive place, right, where the cost of living is just way too high, and where you have to basically allow, you know, I don't know, the schooling system to raise your kid, right? Instead of you raising them, that has a huge impact on them, guys, okay? So because you do, as a parent, you had children for a reason, right? So you want to spend the most amount of time with them, right? And so that would involve you figuring out a way of how to go about doing that, right? So that's also one of the reasons on why I moved to Bulgaria, for example, right? Is because the cost of living here is so much cheaper, right? And my money goes a long way, basically, right? So I can make Western rates, right? But still kind of like live a relatively inexpensive lifestyle, right? And like I can have a good lifestyle, right? And pay next to nothing, right? So yeah, I highly recommend this, right? Also, of course, I don't have to work so much, right? I would have had to work a lot more if I was living in America right now, right? And so because I don't have to work so much, right, I can spend a lot of my time with my kid and I can actually raise him, right? And I know, of course, most of you who are parents out there, right, many of you don't have this you know, you can't move, right, because you're stuck. Maybe even if you're divorced, for example, you still have to stay in a certain location, and I understand that too, you know. So of course, that's not always an option, but it is an option, right? Especially for single parents, like I said, who are able to move, right? So yeah, and trust me, it's going to make a huge difference on your kid, okay? Studies show that, you know, the more a kiddo spends in, for example, kindergarten or somewhere else besides next to you, right? The more that they're affected by this, okay? And the angrier they get, and the more emotional and mental and psychological problems you're going to have to deal with in the long run, okay? So yeah, and then next reason, right, and the final reason, guys, is that moving locations, right, is it will expand your awareness, okay, like crazy, okay? You're gonna think one place is one way, right? Maybe you've read about it, maybe you watched some videos, right? But when you actually get there, it's completely different, and it just expands your awareness, okay? You become smarter as a result, you get wiser, right? You learn from different people, you see that most of us aren't that different, you know. We might have different cultures, but at the end of the day, we seek very similar things, right? We all want love, we want to be happy, we want peace, right? Some of us don't think we deserve it, you know, but that's not true, okay? Also, of course, it will help you understand the world, right? And ultimately, you will understand yourself more, okay? And in turn, you can teach others. I don't know. You can share this knowledge, and by sharing this knowledge, you can expand the awareness and you can expand the consciousness of other people around you, right? So ultimately, the collective consciousness gets raised, right? It becomes higher. So and we all benefit from that, okay? So anyways, guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Much love to you guys, okay?